For the longest time, I believed I had the perfect marriage. My wife, Susan, came into my life when I least expected it, and from the moment we met, I was captivated by her. She had this remarkable ability to make people feel special, and I was no exception. From the very beginning, I knew she wanted a traditional family life, one where she could be a stay-at-home mom, raising our children and creating a home filled with warmth and love. I respected that deeply. I wanted the same thing, a family, a home filled with laughter, a life built on love and shared dreams. For the first 2 years of our marriage, that dream was our reality. Our days were filled with happiness, with quiet moments of affection, and the comforting certainty that we were building something lasting. When Susan told me she was pregnant, my heart swelled with a joy so intense that I could hardly speak. I just stood there, staring at her, trying to process the words that had changed everything. This was the moment I had been waiting for. Overwhelmed with emotion, I pulled her into my arms, holding her tightly. The idea of having a child, a little one running around, looking up to me, was everything I had ever wanted. "Are you serious?" I asked, needing to hear it again. She nodded, laughing softly, and in that instant, my world became brighter. The weeks that followed felt like a dream. I threw myself into preparation, making sure we had everything we needed for the baby's arrival. I imagined late nights spent rocking our child to sleep, morning cuddles in bed, and the shared responsibility of raising someone together. In my mind, this was the start of a beautiful new chapter, one that would bring even more love into our home. But I had no idea that beneath the surface, a different story was unfolding, one that would take my joy and turn it into heartbreak. As Susan entered the final stretch of her pregnancy, complications arose. The doctor recommended that she stay in the hospital for monitoring, and though I hated the idea of her being alone in a sterile hospital room, I knew it was best for her and the baby. I made sure to be there for her every chance I got, before work, after work, even during my lunch breaks. I didn't want her to feel alone in this. She was exhausted most of the time, but I could see the gratitude in her eyes whenever I walked in. Then, something strange started happening. Susan would text me, asking for specific meals, sometimes a simple sandwich from her favorite deli, sometimes a particular brand of juice she liked. I would drop everything to get it for her, wanting to make her as comfortable as possible. But by the time I arrived, she had already eaten the exact same thing. "Who brought it for you?" I asked once, confused. She shrugged, smiling. "Just a friend." I assumed it was one of her girlfriends, or maybe a kind nurse she had bonded with. But every time I pressed for a name, she would brush it off with a vague answer. It wasn't a big deal at the time, just one of those little things that make you pause and wonder. As the due date approached, I wanted to ensure everything at home was secure. I installed security cameras, one in the nursery, of course, but also a few others around the house for extra protection. Susan only knew about the nursery camera. She had no idea I had placed others in the living room and entryway as well. Then Chase was born. The moment I held him in my arms, an indescribable wave of emotion washed over me. I looked down at his tiny face, then at Susan, exhausted but smiling, and I thought we did it. This was our family, our future. I signed the birth certificate without hesitation, fully embracing the role of a father, ready to give my son the best life possible. For a while, things felt normal. Beautiful, even. One day at work, after finishing my tasks, I pulled out my phone to check the security cameras. I just wanted to see my wife and child, maybe catch a glimpse of Susan rocking Chase to sleep or relaxing on the couch. Instead, what I saw made my stomach drop. A man was sitting in our living room, talking to Susan. She was smiling at him, leaning in close, her body language intimate and familiar. Then he reached down, picked up Chase, and bounced him gently in his arms while Susan watched, her eyes filled with warmth. I froze, my mind scrambling for an explanation. Who was he? A relative I didn't know about? A long-lost cousin? A friend from work? But Susan had never mentioned anyone like this. I rewound the footage, needing to see how he had arrived. What I found shattered me. The moment he stepped through the door, Susan greeted him with a passionate kiss. My breath caught in my throat. She was cheating on me. And worse, this man wasn't just some fling. He was involved. He was holding Chase like he belonged there. Susan had no idea about the extra cameras. She must have assumed the only one was in the nursery, which meant she never thought she could be caught. But now I had seen everything. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I didn't lash out. I just sat there at work, staring at my phone, my heart pounding, my world unraveling. When I got home that evening, the house was quiet. I walked into the bedroom and found Susan asleep, Chase nestled beside her. For a moment, I just stood there, staring. If I hadn't seen the footage, I would have believed that this was the perfect picture of a loving family. But now, it all felt like a carefully crafted lie. My gaze landed on her phone, sitting face down on the nightstand. I picked it up, pressing the side button. No passcode. I opened her messages, scrolling through recent conversations. There were chats with family and friends, nothing suspicious. Then, I found one with a woman's name I didn't recognize. Except it wasn't a woman. I opened the thread, and my stomach churned as I read message after message. She had been updating him about Chase, sending him pictures, telling him about doctor's appointments. And his replies made it clear, he believed Chase was his son. I had been lied to. From the very beginning, Susan knew Chase wasn't mine. Rage and devastation warred inside me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I walked out into the living room, sitting in silence, my mind racing. A few moments later, Susan emerged, rubbing her eyes. When she saw me, she smiled. "Hey, babe. You're back." I didn't smile back. My voice was steady, my expression blank. "Who was the man that visited you today?" Her face changed instantly. "What are you talking about?" she asked, feigning confusion. I tilted my head, studying her. "Don't lie to me, Susan. I saw him." She faltered, then crossed her arms. "Okay, fine. A man came by. But it's not what you think. He's just a friend." I held up her phone. "A friend you send pictures of Chase to? A friend you call baby, and my love in messages?" Her eyes widened. And then, instead of apologizing, instead of explaining, she hissed. "You went through my messages? That's an invasion of privacy, Ralph." I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. "That's what she's mad about?" "I'm done, Susan," I said, my voice cold. "This marriage is over. And I'm getting a paternity test." The next morning, I sat in a divorce lawyer's office, laying out everything. The footage, the messages, the betrayal. Before we moved forward, the lawyer told me, "We need to establish paternity." I nodded. Deep down, I already knew the answer. But I had to see it in writing. For the longest time, I believed I had the perfect marriage. Susan came into my life when I least expected it, and from the moment we met, I was captivated. She had a warmth about her, a way of making people feel special, and I was no exception. From the very beginning, she spoke of her dreams, a traditional family, a home filled with love, and the joy of raising children. I admired that about her. I wanted the same things. A family, a place where laughter echoed through the halls. For the first 2 years of our marriage, that dream was our reality. We were happy. When Susan told me she was pregnant, I was overjoyed. I remember staring at her, trying to process the words. This was the moment I had been waiting for. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tightly, overwhelmed with happiness. I had always dreamed of being a father, of hearing tiny feet running through the house, and now, that dream was coming true. The weeks that followed felt like something out of a movie. I threw myself into preparations, making sure everything was perfect for our child's arrival. I thought this was the beginning of a beautiful new chapter, filled with love and excitement. But beneath the surface, an entirely different story was unfolding, one that would shatter everything I believed in. As Susan's pregnancy progressed, complications arose, and her doctor recommended hospitalization for monitoring. I refused to let her go through it alone. Every free moment I had, I spent by her side, before work, after work, even during my lunch breaks. She was exhausted most of the time, but I knew she appreciated my presence. But then, small things started to feel off. Susan would text me, asking for a particular meal. Sometimes something as simple as a sandwich from her favorite deli or a specific juice she liked. Each time, I'd drop everything to get it for her, only to arrive at the hospital and find that she had already eaten the exact thing she requested. "Who brought it?" I asked more than once. She would shrug. "Oh, just a friend." A friend. I assumed it was one of her girlfriends, maybe a nurse she had bonded with. But every time I pressed for a name, she brushed it off. "Just someone who was around," she'd say with a casual smile. It didn't make sense. If she had someone bringing her food, why was she still asking me to? At the time, it seemed like a small, insignificant detail. A tiny oddity in an otherwise perfect life. Then Chase was born. I can't put into words the emotions I felt when I held him for the first time. It was overwhelming, the kind of love that grips you instantly. I looked at Susan, exhausted but smiling, And in that moment, I thought, we did it. Without hesitation, I signed the birth certificate. I was his father. I was ready to give him the best life imaginable. At that moment, nothing else mattered. But then came the day everything changed. One afternoon, while I was at work, I decided to check in on my family. I pulled up the security camera feed on my phone, expecting to see Susan rocking Chase to sleep or lounging on the couch. Instead, I saw something that made my heart stop. A man. He was sitting with Susan, talking, laughing. She leaned in close, her smile warm, familiar. Then he reached down and picked up Chase, bouncing him gently in his arms while Susan watched with undeniable affection. My mind raced. Who was he? A cousin? An old friend? Someone from work? But then I checked the earlier footage. The moment he arrived, Susan had greeted him with a passionate kiss. My stomach twisted. My hands went cold. She had no idea about the extra cameras I had installed in the living room and entryway. She thought the only one existed in the nursery. I watched, unable to look away. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I sat there at my desk, my world crumbling around me, trying to process the betrayal. That evening, when I got home, the house was quiet. I walked into the bedroom and found Susan asleep, Chase curled up beside her. For a moment, I just stood there, staring. If I hadn't seen what I saw earlier, I would have believed this was the perfect picture of a loving family. But now it felt like a carefully crafted illusion. My gaze fell on Susan's phone, sitting face down on the nightstand. A thought crossed my mind. If she had been lying to me, her phone would tell me the truth. I picked it up, pressed the side button. No passcode. I opened her messages and started scrolling. Some were with family, friends, normal conversations. But then I saw a name I didn't recognize. A woman's name. I tapped it, and there it was. Message after message confirming my worst fears. She wasn't talking to a woman. She was talking to him. She had been updating him about Chase, sending pictures, sharing details about his doctor's appointments. In their messages, she called him my love, baby. And the final blow? She had known all along. Chase wasn't mine. She let me believe a lie. For months. I wanted to wake her up, demand answers, scream, why? But instead, I sat in the darkness, the weight of reality sinking in. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer. The DNA test only confirmed what I already knew. Probability of paternity, 0%. Chase was not my son. I filed for divorce immediately. I thought it would be simple. The proof was undeniable. Susan had cheated, lied, and deceived me into raising a child that wasn't mine. Surely the court would see reason. But fairness doesn't always exist in a courtroom. Susan fought me every step of the way. She wanted half of everything. Half of my house, half of my savings, half of what I had built. And worse, her lawyer spun the narrative in her favor. She was a struggling stay-at-home mother, abandoned by a distant husband who had neglected her emotionally. It was a lie. Yet the court entertained it. In the end, she walked away with a significant portion of my assets. But I walked away with something more valuable, my freedom. 2 years passed. I rebuilt my life. And then, out of nowhere, Susan came crawling back. She showed up at my office, pleading for help. She had burned through the money, had no job, no savings. Just a small loan, she begged. I'll pay you back. I laughed. After everything? After you lied, cheated, tried to ruin me? You think I owe you anything? Her face twisted with anger, but she left. I thought that was the end of it. Until weeks later, I was served. She was suing me for child support. But this time, I was ready. The judge saw right through her. She lost. And when she tried to lash out in court, she was held in contempt and sentenced to 6 months in jail. As she was dragged away, screaming, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Looking back, I've learned valuable lessons. Never ignore the signs. Love should never blind you to reality. Protect yourself, emotionally and legally. And most importantly, you can heal. But only if you choose to move forward. Pain is temporary. But the lessons you learn, those stay with you forever.